everybody, and welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We're so glad that you could join us today. I'm here with my good buddy, Mark. How you doing today, Mark?
I am doing good. I'm in a slight panic as I am currently putting together my themed drink. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Last minute cocktail mixing.
Perfect.
I can hear it.
No,
There's some ice there. Whatever it is,
you're going to hear me
ice involved.
You're going to hear me shaking it too. But yeah, good to see you, sir. I'm excited about today's show.
Me too. Hey, you know what? It may feel like the world's falling apart out there, and it's a good day to pour yourself a drink and to get ready for the Moonshine Jesus Show. Today, we're talking about the Orville. I want to remind you that we are brought to you by progressivechristianity.org, a great place for all your progressive Christian resources. Also, hope that you might follow the Moonshine Jesus Show on social media. We've got some exciting upcoming stuff. Maybe before we share our drinks, we want to let you know that we're going to be a Wild Goose this year, right?
Us?
Wild Goose. Us.
They let us in? They let us in?
Even us.
Absolutely.
They must. I don't know what was up with them. Why would they let us in?
All the big names must have canceled on them.
They
probably canceled on
them. So,
but
we want you all
got
to
fun.
show up. Yes, we do.
Saturday. What was the time on Saturday? I'm trying to remember. Is it 4?
Is that right?
4:15, I believe.
I think so.
Be at the Goose Cast stage and be a part of our show. What are we going to talk about on that show? You got ideas?
Okay, I've got an idea, Mark. Tell me what you think about this. You and I both love Marvel movies. There's a big Marvel movie coming out. Thor, Love and Thunder.
Absolutely. Oh, that'd be perfect.
And would that be okay? Yeah.
I think that drops the first week of July-ish, doesn't it?
That's right. So everybody has time to see it.
Absolutely. That would be great. So make sure you catch it. And let's provide some incentive for them to show up. What do you think?
Oh, I think that's good because they're not going to show up just for you and me, Mark.
No, I mean, who would do that? I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do it
either. But you know what I would show up for? Alcohol. And
absolutely.
I think we've got a plan. We're going to give away alcohol.
For the first 20 folks who show up, we will be giving away a mixed themed drink, and you will receive it in this lovely Moonshine Jesus Show glass moonshine jug with the show logo on it. It's pretty cool. I'd be all right with that. But listen, we know it's going to
jug. That's great. It's great. I want that.
I have it, so I'll make sure you get one. I probably can make sure you get one.
Okay,
but we know that it's going to be a mad rush. There's going to be so many people. The first 20 people are just going to be a fraction of who shows up. So we needed to make sure there was stuff for other folks, right? So we've also got these Moonshine Jesus Show beer huggies. We've also got some themed logo stickers to hand out. And we're working on an interactive part of the show.
Oh, yes.
And those folks who do interact, we might be throwing you something from the stage. You want to say anything about that?
Okay, so back by popular demand from the first iteration of this show are the Shine Jesus Shine t-shirts. Has the Moonshine Jesus Show mug on it that says Shine Jesus Shine. You're going to want to be wearing that, and people are going to ask you all about it. And you're going to say, I listen to this great podcast. It's called the Moonshine Jesus Show. They drink, they talk politics and theology. You should listen. So I think what we're saying, Mark, is everyone is going to want to come and listen to us at Goosecast. It's going to be fantastic.
I would hope so. We certainly, you may not want to hear us, but at least you want the incentives.
That's right. And you know what? We'll try to have some interesting things to talk about too. Today we are talking about the Orville. And we've got some themed drinks to go along with it.
Indeed,
Mark,
we do.
We have heard your ice. We've heard you shaking up your cocktail. Let's see what you've been mixing up.
So I decided, there's just a lot of themed drinks for the Orville out there that people have made. So I went back to an old episode where one of the drinks they had from the Mocklin, which is one of the races that they interface with a lot. One of their drinks is called an Opsada. And so I decided to make my own version of an opsada. And it's sort of a dark brown, purplish drink. And here's what they say about it, that when you drink it, it grows into a parasite in the body. And that sensation is like intensely pleasurable. So I tried to go with a kind of a dark purple kind of theme. So I took purple people eater and tweaked it. So I've got vodka, blue, carousel. I've got sweet and sour mix and grenade. But then I switched the cran grape for a cran blackberry. And then I switched the lemon lime soda for a cherry Coke soda to keep it dark. And then, because I can't actually have a parasite grow in my body.
You can't? Come on, wimp.
I have toast. You can call me a wimp. I've toasted some super worms and put them on as garnish. And I'll be eating one at the end of each segment.
At the end of each segment. Okay, I got
one for each segment. One for each segment. My opsada drink. So, and you can see I've got my nice little brown purpley color. How about you, sir? What did you end up with?
That's good. That's good. I love it. I can't wait to see you eat those worms. Okay, so I've got a cocktail called the Orville, and I don't think I didn't make it up. I Googled it, and I don't think anyone created this for the show. I think it's just a cocktail, right? Just
it's a cocktail for for a semi-well-known bar called the Orville.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know if anyone out there has had this before. I have never had it before.
What's in it, though? That's what
simple.
I want to know. What's in it?
It's simple. Yeah, it's simple. Okay. It's just vodka, and it is lemon juice, and it is simple syrup, a little bit of cherry juice, and some cherries. And so this is the Orville, and I've got some planetary ice cubes in here.
Ooh, well done, sir.
Yes, for our space theme. So cheers to you, Mark.
Cheers to you, sir. Wow, that's pretty good.
Can you feel the parasite living within you?
I'm hoping to feel the parasite because supposedly it's intensely pleasurable. So I can't wait for this to happen.
Okay, well, let's let that parasite grow in Mark while we go to the drop. We'll come back as we geek out.
Sorry, I had to eat the worm.
You had to. Yeah, of course you did. Of course you did.
Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Won't you shine a light?
Hello and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. I'm here with my good buddy Caleb. We are about to take a look at the Orville, particularly season 3, and even more particularly the second episode, which is called Shadow Realms. For those of you who may not know much about the Orville, it is a primarily episodic, decidedly hopeful, and socially moral conscious sci-fi dramedy. That it started sort of as a reverent parody of Star Trek, the original series, a little bit of the Next Generation, but it's really become very much its own show, and it follows the adventures of the crew of the USS Orville as they explore the galaxy under the leadership of Captain Ed Mercer, played by Seth MacFarlane, who also is the writer, creator, and director, frequently the director of these shows, and Caleb, this was you were aware of it, but you hadn't had time to really get into the Orville much, from what I understand. Is this correct?
That's right. Yeah, the Orville is relatively new to me. So I knew that Seth MacFarlane was a Trekkie because of all the references in Family Guy. And of course, I came of age watching Family Guy. And so, so I knew that. So whenever the Orville premiered, I watched it. But I took like a 3-4 year sabbatical from the Orville.
Well, I think... Right, and a lot of us ended up taking one whether we wanted to or not, because at the end of the second season, lots of things happened. COVID happened. Seth MacFarlane was changing away from his contract with Fox, going to, I think, NBC. And there were questions about whether Orville was going to be canceled or not. And he ended up getting it moved over to Hulu, but we had COVID. And so we had this big gap.
Right.
But I really, I appreciate, before we get specifically into episode 2, Shadow Realms, I really have learned to appreciate this show over time, because, while it started off as that kind of almost a parody, it kind of figured out its own zone, its own space, and it's something that's really not out there, I think. On a couple of levels. I mean, do you feel like there's something new or fresh about it, or does it just feel like the old Star Trek?
No, I think there absolutely is. So even since the last time I watched it, so I watched the first season, and I thought, well, this is kind of fun, but it is it was, I think, at that time, I kind of thought this is truer to Star Trek than some of the Star Trek shows that were on at the moment. And so, but whenever I was going back through in preparation for this and watching it again, I thought this really has become its own show. It's got its own storyline. Right. It's not relying quite so heavily on kind of the comedic kind of stuff. The
It started off leaning.
It really did. It was leaning into
first.
And so this was different. Its own kind of gravitas and its own, world universe has been created, and
they've learned to lean away from leaning too heavily on the comedy. The comedy is more like, I think I read somewhere that if memory serves, that McFarlane called it comedy icing. That they're really interested in building characters and storylines. And then the comedy is just the icing around it.
And the second episode's a really good example of that, Mark, because it's a pretty serious episode, right? But then there's the humorous part about trying to get the batteries out and saying, if it's hard to do, you're not doing it right. It's just right. It's not a comedic thing, but
for those who haven't seen that episode, you're right. For those of you who haven't seen the episode, someone's trying to get batteries out of a particular handheld device, and one person that they're with is like, well, if you can't get them out, you're not doing it right. If they don't come out easy, you're not doing it right. And the person kind of is frustrated with that answer. And then the captain walks in and they say, I can't get these batteries out. And his response is, well, they're not coming out easy. You're not doing it right, which is a great little kind of, but I think that also points, right. I think that also points to one of the other parts I really like about this show that I am not seeing in almost any other Star Trek kind of shows that are out there. I mean, I think there's 12 different Star Treks out there at this point. Some of them finished, some are new. There are a lot. Right. But except for the exception of one, Below Decks, they almost always feature people who are the best of the best, performing at their best and making the best decisions. And that's one of the things that I really like about the Orville, is that these are not so much the best and the brightest. They're more like well-intentioned folks. Sometimes they get how to get clever. But because of it, they sort of feel more relatable. And if I don't know, I think it's really intentional, because when you look at, they show them drinking, they show them with hangovers, they show them complaining about little tiny things, picking on each other, almost nonstop. It just feels very real and organic. Like, this is what it would really be like if you were shut in this one ship with these folks for a very long time. I just feel like there's this realness about it that is more relatable. Like, I'm not going to be, Captain Picard. I'm not at that level. But hey,
Captain maybe the Orville. Maybe I can serve on the Orville.
I can keep up with him a little bit.
Yeah, that's right.
And so that's one of the things I really love about the show so far, is that they have done that. Do you relate to that as well? Or?
Yeah, I think so. And I've seen commentaries on what it would be like to serve on the Enterprise. Yeah, and people would be saying, it would be hell to be on the Enterprise. Like, this looks terrible. There's you're gonna go hear Data doing a violin concert, and that's pretty much what your social outing
entertainment
is.
is.
The rest of it is just work. Yeah, so I think a little more real is cool. And so I think one of the other things that you and I had talked about offline, Mark, is that you had mentioned that in some ways this has influenced then the Star Trek franchise, right? And
Absolutely.
so I think maybe one way that you just gave an example of is Lower Decks. And so I think Lower Decks, the animated kind of humorous Star Trek spinoff now, is one of the more brilliant Star Trek pieces out there. And I think it's probably safe to say that the comedic timing of the Orville had some influence on Lower Decks. And you made some other thoughts, I think, about ways that
really
Orville
think
had influence on.
Yeah, absolutely. I really believe that what we see in the Strange New Worlds that has come out, we've had series after series that have become very kind of long story arcs that run through the entire season. And if you can't just tune into the middle, it's not so episodic. And Orville brought that back, which was one of the strengths of the original series of Star Trek. And I don't think it's shouldn't be a surprise that after Orville was somewhat successful bringing back, that we see a full developed Star Trek that did the same thing. I agree with you. I think it influenced the comedy and the kind of relatableness of the characters in Lower Decks. But I also really think that it made the Star Trek universe folks realize, we can actually do episodic and it really matter. Matter of fact, it allows you to develop characters better, which makes moral stories more interesting and more impactful because you're kind of emoting and feeling with the folks that are the characters. And I think it's sort of brilliant.
I think so too, and I think it really impacted that franchise in a positive way, because I think that was something that was really hurting the Star Trek franchise, is doing these long arcs. So I mean, I guess in some ways we can't really help but talk about Star Trek because it is a direct kind of parody of Star Trek, the Orville,
almost homage to it.
Yeah. You're right. It's a love letter. It's Seth MacFarlane's love letter to while poking fun at some of the ridiculous nature of Star Trek 2. That absolutely is good, and that only a true fan, someone truly in love with the franchise, can really do.
Absolutely. Well, but let's move on and look specifically at. I mean, the new season is out. We're starting to get episodes of it.
Yes.
Instead of calling it season 3, they're calling it New Horizons. And I think you and I both, early in episode 2, called Shadow Realm, started realizing that they were actually going to be grappling, at least to some degree, with some pretty interesting theological stuff. And I'm bringing this up at the end of this segment because I think it'll be a natural move into our next segment. But essentially, the Krill is a new species that they're interacting with and learning how to kind of interrelate with and trying to work with them to gain access in some ways to a larger area of space, which they kind of are in charge of. And when they set it up so that they can start doing this, they're in negotiations. I really found fascinating that the Krill were saying, "Look, there's this area in this space, there's this place where you can't go." I mean, it started to intrigue me. And you want to talk a little bit about the kind of how the religion plays into it?
Yeah, so I mean, that was kind of fun, and it was fun to see them respond as, "We're explorers. We're going out there no matter what your warning is," and that's so like typical. But there are a ton of religious allegories in this, and I think that I know we want to delve more into that in just a minute. Should we take a break, Mark, and come back? What do you think?
I think that'd be appropriate. And then we can talk about kind of the storyline, because it's a little tiny part of it that I think can really lead us into a lot of interesting thoughts, particularly around a religion and what religion does and why we believe in certain things. So let's, before we take the drop, though, before
you've got something you want to say. I can tell. Mark. Tell me.
It's just a simple little thing, and I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about it because one of my favorite characters was Yaphet, which was a little green gelatinous guy.
Norm Macdonald,
was voiced by Norm Macdonald, who has passed away since this has happened.
Yeah.
And I want to shout out to one of our loyal listeners, Ellen Green, who also is one of her favorite, I think actually her favorite character, who did her cocktail completely themed on the Yaphet. Midori vodka lime and a little Perrier. So shout out to her for that tip of the hat to Yaphet. I love that character, and we will miss Norm Macdonald. That just needed to be said. But for now, let's lift it up with some good tunes, and then we'll get into some theology.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. Today we are talking about the Orville, and we are moving into our theopolitical segments. And Mark just gave a moving tribute to Norm Macdonald. May he rest in peace. So I
also forgot to eat my worm, so I'm going to do that.
Yeah, we want to see this. Eat.
That was going down right now. Okay. Please continue, sir.
Have you got that preloaded? You're ready for it? No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got two more.
You do. Two more. Okay, good. Yeah. Let's see if you get a parasite. Okay. So the second episode of the new season of the Orville leans heavily into the theme of religion. And the way that it talks about religion is about making sense of the things that we don't understand. And so I do think that is one of the primary purposes of religion, is that it helps us to kind of make sense of that which is indescribable or that which is beyond human understanding.
Absolutely.
I would like to hear your thoughts on this, Mark. I want to know, one, as we're acquiring more and more like scientific knowledge, do you think religion still has a place in helping us to make sense of the world? I think one of the things that I see in shows like this is a kind of this notion of like progressivism, like that we're making such scientific progress that the days of religion will one day be past, and one day we'll get it through our thick skulls that we can just rely completely on like the progress that we're making as humans. What do you think this is saying about religion, Mark? And do you think that there's going to be a time when religion isn't needed anymore?
Well, I think this particular show is making a commentary on religion, and it is somewhat negative in that the Creole, their holy book is called the Enchada, and in it says that this area of space is horrible because there's demons that live there, and they possess the people who go there. And we learn as the show goes along that that's really not what's going on, that there's really this other alien race that's going to kind of take over people. And so it does kind of shoot down what their religion was there for. And I think that is actually not as much of a negative as the show writers probably thought it was, because for the Creole, there was a period in time in their development where it was necessary to try to understand to a degree what this horrible thing that keeps happening to the people who go over there is. And they weren't in a place where they could investigate and scientifically figure it out. So it served a purpose. It was helpful as a warning and as some kind of understanding to help the race develop. And I think that's sort of the two-sidedness of where I'm going with this answer. I think religion that does not move, that does not respond to science, respond to new information, I do think that ultimately we will see that it is useless, and that at some point in the very far future, that kind of science is going to find, that kind of religion is going to find an end. We certainly aren't now. We live in the U.S. where we see folks believing in what they want to believe and then pinning it on religion and doing it over and over again. But I think shows like this point out how important religion can be if it develops and if it expands with new information. I mean, it does help us understand the unknown. It does help us, if it's done right, it helps us connect together. As a matter of fact, one of the things that happens is the demons turn out to be this alien race that infect Admiral Christie, who becomes one of these alien races. And ultimately what solves the problem, this feels like that it's anti-science, because it all started with, we can't go there because there's demons. And then ultimately we find out it's not. And Dr. Finn uses science to save the day. But the thing is, Finn doesn't just use science to save the day. Finn uses relationship also to save the day. This connectedness.
That's right.
He calls out to Admiral Christie and says, "Hey, I need to talk to you. This is about your life. Your life is at risk." And she uses the relationship, the connectedness that they have. And I know both of us understand God as being in the connections that we have with each other in the world around us. So I think unintentionally, the show kind of proved that a developing and understanding religion is not only going to continue, but it's reasonable and necessary. I mean, does that sound?
I think that's a great answer, Mark. And I think that it also points out that the Krill are not wrong in what they're saying. That they're talking about is like demonic possession, right? And so it is in possession. A way, it is, right. It's a parasite that transforms someone into something else, and so they're not wrong. It's just saying it in the way that they understand it. I think that's one of the things that I've seen as one of my biggest jobs as a clergy person is to look at the Bible and try to make sense of some of these stories, some of which are about demonic possession, right? A large portion of the New Testament is about demonic possession, right? And so it's the ancient, and so to help people understand that it's the ancient way of talking about the problems that we all face as humanity in a way that they understood, right? They didn't understand the way that mental illness works. They didn't understand the way that even physical illness works. And so they talked about it in the way that they could. And so I think we're still kind of struggling with the same issues. And I think if we see the Bible as a record of people's experience of trying to make sense of the world and trying to make sense of God instead of seeing it as an answer book, if we're able to look at it in that way, then that makes a big difference. So, but here's another question I have to you, Mark. So, okay.
So just know I've got questions for you too.
No, I'm going to ask them all.
Dang it,
you don't get to.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Every time I'm getting before you breathe, I didn't ask a question.
I didn't think we were in Make Me Look Stupid yet. Go ahead, ask the questions.
Okay. So I agree. So I obviously, we both have some vested interest in this. I mean, this is what we do for, a job, right? I mean, we both work in religion, even though we're critical of the religious establishment and the way that it works. But we've also seen religion used in a very harmful way recently. I think particularly over the last week. I know you all have no idea what I'm speaking of. So here's my question, Mark. Okay, so if religion is used to make sense of the world and it can be valuable in that way, does religion do more harm than good when we see religion being manipulated in such a way as to, like, say, take away a person's right to choose? If we're talking about like medical health care,
I'm going to go back to my answer earlier and say that religion that is stagnant and gets stuck in its old beliefs and in the face of new understandings definitely does. And then the second part of my answer, though, is religion is a great tool for manipulating people. And unfortunately, powerful people recognize that and do it a lot. And ultimately reshape and remold religion to not be what it was originally intended to be about, but also ultimately to be about pushing their own agendas, which I think, particularly in the case of reproductive rights in the U.S. right now, is what we see happening. Because you and I both, I know, talked about on Sunday about how what's going on is actually the opposite of anything that we learn from the teachings of Jesus in terms of loving our neighbors and making sure everyone is cared for and their health is cared for, and those kinds of things. So I think old religion, stagnant religion, and religion that is being used as a tool to manipulate has done more harm than good, and always will. There will always be people who are looking to change and motivate the masses in negative ways using religion. And that's what the folks who are trying to use religion as a way of connecting with folks and understanding love and how we are supposed to be with each other and create large community, and particularly the marginalized, bring inside. I think those of us who believe in all of those things, it means that we always have to be vigilant and stand up and over against and be very vocal when religion is used for something other than that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Mark. And that it's not just religion that's used in that way. People use whatever they can to manipulate others into doing what they want. And I think that's something we've certainly seen from the religious right, as they've been cherry picking Bible verses, taken completely out of context and manipulating them to mean something that they were never intended to mean. And so I'm 100% with you. I think that religion can serve as a tool, and I think those of us who have a different understanding of that, what I would argue is a more authentic understanding of that, have somewhat of an obligation to say, actually, this is very empowering. Actually, this is encouraging us to be with each other and to stand with each other. And we really need to do that. So that was one of the religious elements in season 2 of the Orville, and but there was who knew that Seth MacFarlane could create such a theologically powerful show. Tell me, Mark, what did you have insights onto? Was there something else you latched onto that was theological, but you wanted to explore?
Well, I really, for me, the main one was this idea. And I do have a question for you, though.
I knew you did. See, that was me. I knew you said that. I'm trying to
I appreciate you setting that up for me. So it's kind of a two-part question. So why is it? 2 parts.
What? Is this to make up for all those questions I asked you? Okay.
It is. You're going to get it, man. No, but I think they're related, and I think that they're questions that are brought up naturally from episode 2. So why is it that in this age of information and science, why is it that folks still hold on to kind of old beliefs and old legends that data and information has disproven at this point? And as a sort of side question, why is it? I think part of this is why is it that we trust faith sometimes more than we trust facts and information and data?
I think people want answers. I think people want to know exactly how they ought to believe about everything. And I think people want to know all the right answers. And then to once they've come to those, to just accept those for all time. Yeah. And so I think I don't find that comforting, but I think a lot of people find it comforting to feel like they know things. And so I think
are you saying it's easier?
Yeah. It's easy. Right. Of course it's easier, but it's ultimately shallow, right? Yeah. I think that kind of faith is really shallow. And I think you see that whenever there's a little bit of interrogation, the only thing that people really do is they double down on their same answers. If you're engaging in critical thinking and you're really trying to get to the heart of what's actually behind that belief, a lot of times people really can't explain it other than, well, that's just what I believe. That's the worst argument, is just, well, that's what I believe. It's just a give up argument, right? So it's easier. I think for some people it's comforting, but I think that we really have a more mature and growing faith, and really a deeper faith, whenever we're able to say things like, you know what, I don't know, or you know what, I used to think this. and I was exposed to this new information, and it changed my mind. But I have a deeper faith because it has grown, and so I think that's why people stick with the old stuff. But that's why I think it's more powerful to be open to new information.
I love it. I agree. Completely agree. I also, before we close this out, I'm going to eat my next worm because I promised one per segment. So down the hatch, nutty, roasty, tasty deliciousness.
Is it giving you pure joy, Mark?
I don't think that it started, kind of taking the body over yet, but I'm sure a little bit later it will.
It will. Maybe after the show. Who knows? Okay. Here's the thing. We both had some questions for each other during this segment, but we have not yet even begun to try to make each other look stupid. We're going to do that in just a minute after the drop.
Moonshine Jesus, the bright sky. Moonshine Jesus, baby, alright. Moonshine Jesus, a surprising delight. Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Thank you for sticking with us all the way to our final segment of the Moonshine Jesus Show. We are very gracious, grateful for all of you who have hung in with this live broadcast, as well as those who are listening back on the podcast. We really appreciate you hanging with us this long. We've been having a lot of fun. We get to have a little more fun now and on one of our favorite segments called Make Me Look Stupid. Now listen, Caleb. Listen. I'm going to show what a gracious co-host I can be.
You're benevolent, aren't you, Mark?
A gracious and benevolent co-host I can be. And I am going to, unlike we normally do in this segment, defer to you for the first question.
Oh, well, how kind of you, Mark. I feel like there's something coming up.
There's
no agenda. There's
no agenda.
Okay.
I just felt like that I wanted you to have that opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
Absolutely.
Here's my question. So, in episode
I've had too much of my
too many of those worms. Too many of them.
Asada and worms may be getting to me. I don't know. All right, you go ahead with your question, sir.
So in episode 2, you mentioned this earlier that it is through relationship that the Doctor appeals to this admiral who has become a new being, a new alien. But it's not just relationship. She also threatens chemical and germ warfare to
in response to them taking over the entire, changing everyone into a completely new race and basically killing them all off.
Yeah.
Right,
but she does threaten to use chemical and germ warfare. Granted, yes, there. So here's what I want to know, Mark. I want to know, is she justified in using threatening chemical warfare? And are there situations in our real life where that's justifiable?
Right. Okay, so you're getting into a subject that's near and dear to my heart, just war theory. And in this particular episode, no, it was not justifiable. They did not follow all of the markings of what would allow something to be a just war. And this was a mini internalized war on the ship of the Orville. You first have to try all other possible ways out before you resort to any type of violence. And they jumped pretty quickly to, hey, I think I've figured out how to create a disease that will basically kill them all off. So no, I don't think this was particularly justifiable. You can argue that they only had so much time and they had to do something quickly before they were all changed over, but they didn't really show them investigating other methods of resolving the crisis that was going on. But yes, just war theory does suggest that there is a time when violence is the last resort, is the only thing that can be used to protect people. Yes, It is a lose-lose scenario, but you save more people than lose folks. But I will go as far as to say I am not aware of any war in the history of our race that has ever actually happened after they met the requirements of just war. There's so much stuff that happens beforehand that needs to be done that we don't do in terms of relationships and negotiations and talking to folks and so many other options within it. We just don't do it. So I can see it being, there's sometimes being the case where violence is necessary. I have never seen us as a race prove that violence is necessary and then act on it. I'm not even saying that, say, World War II didn't ultimately be what had to happen, but I am saying we didn't go through the steps to be assured that that's what had to happen. I mean,
no, that's very interesting. I think that's very interesting. Well, I think your last comment there in particular was very interesting, because I think a lot of people, when they're talking about just war theory, tend to point to World War II as like the justification for why just war theory is important. And so I think it's great, first of all, that in the conversation about the Orville, that we were able to talk about chemical warfare and just war theory. I love that. Right.
It's a brilliant. It really is a brilliant show, and we've already said all the reasons we love it. But with the comedy, with the relatability, but they still go into those hard moral issues. I love it.
Yeah. And so getting some Naborian ethics here is very cool. So I think you're right. I always say this: on my best day, I hope I'm a pacifist, but I know at the end of the day, I'm probably not, because I think that there are situations where that's all you can do, and so I'm too much of a pragmatist to be able to buy into that completely, I think. And so I second what you said. I think that we don't do a very good job of building up relationships, and even in talking about things like World War II, we allowed Germany to be in such disrepair from World War I that there was that we drove people to the brink of desperation. So I will say too, I feel like there are a lot of desperate people in the United States today, and so maybe we should be taking some real proactive measures to be thinking about how it is that we can help support people who are living in extreme poverty and people who are on the brink after losing reproductive rights here recently. So thank you, Mark. That was a wonderful answer to that question. I love it. Okay, I you let me go first. You were gracious. You were benevolent. You were such a wonderful co-host. I want to hear now what you've got for me. Some more Greek myths or something. Now
my real reason is going to be revealed. I knew that you were going to ask. No. I knew that you were going to ask this really insightful question that deserved real attention to be really revealed. My question is very much not that at all.
Good.
Here's my question to you. Why doesn't the Planetary Union, which is what the Orville's part of, why do they not have transporters?
I had taken a sabbatical from this, this show, right? And so in episode 2, which we're focusing on today, they are going to this space station, and they're in the space, like the shuttlecraft thing, right? And I'm like, why are they not transporting over there? And I'm like, oh yeah, because it's like not Star Trek.
It's not Star Trek.
And so, right. So the fun thing is, right, the reason that Gene Roddenberry invented transporters was because he couldn't figure out how to get the shuttlecraft down.
They couldn't afford to do the graphics to make a shuttlecraft every show.
Right, so they figure out this way to transport people from one place to another. Apparently, in this alternate dimension of the Orville, they have not yet figured out how to deconstruct a person atom by atom and reconstruct them into another.
That's so simple. I don't understand.
No. I'm going to give you an ethical reason why, Mark. Because because I think it's because in the Orville universe, they've discovered that the transporter is essentially making a clone of you. And they've decided that that's an unethical thing to do, to take you apart atom by atom and reconstruct atom by atom, a facsimile of you in another place. I don't know.
I like it, man.
You like it? You think?
I like that answer. I like that answer. I mean, I completely.
Did I
agree.
moralize that a little bit? Is that okay?
I like it. I like it a lot. There's nothing wrong with that. I think you and I also have talked about other things when we were looking at Star Trek, like the transporter technology. If they really are as good with it as they think they can, then any kind of disease or a parasite you pick up on planet, you ought to just take it out. Like, they shouldn't ever become part of a storyline, because you should have a buffer that understands all the parts that were there when you went, and any part that isn't there when you come back, you just filter it out and let it go. Which in this particular episode too, that would have helped a lot, because there was some kind of thing that got into his body. Yeah, the transporter, you could have compared the two buffers and said, well, let's get rid of the stuff that's not really him, and he'd have been perfectly fine, and we wouldn't have had a story. So, yeah, I think.
Okay, so that's why they don't have transporters, because it would have stepped on the story.
It makes for bad writing. It makes for bad writing. I think that's really it. Well, listen, man, we've been having a great time. It's so much fun. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit. What should we be doing next week?
You know what? I've heard about this great show on Netflix called The Umbrella Academy that so good, I haven't watched at all. But you've watched it, haven't you?
I have. I really enjoy it. They've just dropped the new season. It revolves around this sort of dysfunctional family of adopted siblings who are all superheroes, and they get together and solve basically the mystery of their father's death, as well as, and just kind of a side story, the threat of an imminent apocalypse. So they've got a few storylines to investigate there, but it's really wonderful. There's some great characters in it, and so let's next week let's take a look at the new season and talk a little about the Umbrella Academy. What do you think?
I'm in. I'm gonna binge it this week. So if you haven't seen it, binge it with me.
Perfect. Well, I'm gonna down this last. It was my last worm. It was really fantastic. It was almost as fantastic. Later, I'm sure it's going to bring me something. I've enjoyed it, but I have enjoyed the show much more. I've also enjoyed all of you who have hung with us to the end. So thank you again for watching the Moonshine
Jesus
show, and we will catch you the next time.